Hello and welcome to R&R's Ask the Expert. I'm Kayla McGowan, editor-in-chief, and today we're talking about sustainable growth, franchisee support, and women in restoration. I have two lovely ladies from PuroClean joining me today. First guest is Margaret Chebat. She is the Vice President of Franchise Engagement, and Melissa Wittig, co-owner and founding team member of PuroClean Northwest. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Thanks for having us
Thanks,
today.
Kayla. Sorry, I'll try
Yes,
to
thank
read
you, ladies, for coming on. I'm so excited. We have so much to tackle, and it wouldn't be a Pure Clean podcast without starting with some of the most notable things you guys have accomplished as a group this year. So, Pure Clean recently was recognized as one of entrepreneurs' fastest growing franchises in 2026. What specific operational or strategic decisions have fueled that rapid expansion without sacrificing your franchisees' satisfactions? And let me correct myself, franchise owners' satisfaction. Margaret, can you share some insight on that?
Absolutely. So this is a passion of mine because as VP of franchise engagement, it really matters to me what the franchise experience feels like, looks like, and really is on a day-to-day basis. So we took a look at our operations and we really decided that we need to focus on the operational aspect of the business and on sales and marketing, right? Because you can have a business, but if you're not out there selling, marketing, letting people know that you're in the area, you're not really going to thrive and drive that business to your location. So we added additional resources in that direction. We expanded our operations team. We condensed the amount of franchise owners to regional directors so they have that one-on-one support in addition to our greater team. And we really looked at some of our software, our systems, and our processes. And we made an effort to streamline those as well so that they're easier to use and a little more friendly for the network to engage with, at least for us. And one of my plans in this new role is to really continue to work on that franchise experience and make sure that we're taking them from the day that they show up to PuroClean to the day that they decide to successfully sell their business. Their experience throughout is world class.
Yeah, I would definitely say I know you guys have had some major growth in the last couple of years. Well, last 10 years, right? Since Mark Davis and Frank Torrey have taken on the role of just leading you guys and letting you guys determine your guys' success. I will definitely say it's been really great to see that. But in the last year, the growth has been immense. And to your point, there's been some things implemented. There's been some really big changes. I know your regional directors play a huge role in the success of your franchise owners. So, with that being said, Melissa, as a co-owner, what is your thought on, or what are your thoughts on how this growth has changed and why it's so important for the franchise to succeed as a whole?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's what's been exciting for me is you mentioned all the changes that Frank and Mark have implemented when they took over as owners. Well, we opened our first franchise territory in 2017. So that was shortly after Mark and Frank took ownership of the network. And their leadership style and how they spoke about it was one of the reasons why we felt good about joining the network. But what I've seen, in my opinion, one of the most critical things that has enabled the growth is the way that they've approached their role, not only the owners, but the whole corporate team and their role versus the franchisee's role. So over the last 9 years, what I've seen from the perspective of being in the franchise seat is that they have been continually reinventing um, the strategy of how things are run, what resources that they offer to the franchise owners, and not only resources in tools and software like Margaret's talking about, but also resources in people. They have increased the number of regional directors that we've had. Every regional director that I've worked with has been a key resource for me. And I'm not just saying this to speak the party line, but it's true. We still stay tight with everyone that we've had as a regional director, and each of them has been formative for me growing in leadership as well. But what's really interesting for me is that as we've been going through the growing pains of scaling our own operation at the franchise level, I've been able to kind of see parallels with corporate and how they're scaling as well. and how they plan and execute scaling without losing the quality or the culture. And from personal hard-won experience, that is a lot harder than people think it is. It's really hard. And I think that corporate has been very intentional about being transparent and striving for continuous improvement, which they talk about all the time. So not just putting out fires, but systemic change. And the changes that have happened since the time we opened up to now is pretty mind-blowing. I think that the brand and the network has matured a lot. And being part of a team that has that perspective as a value system is really key for me.
Wow, a great answer. How do I follow up with that? Both of you ladies, well said. But I just wanted to say something really quickly. The slogan Pure Clean on the Move is what you all live by. The evolution and the change that you guys see is immense, and you both echoed that really, really well. It's not just a slogan, right? I think it's something that the entire team lives by, which is really important. And I will definitely say I have seen the growth internally. I will speak on that just from the experience that I've seen is, when people enter the Puro Queen family, the career path is exceptional. I guess is the right word to use. I've seen people move from RDs into leadership. I've seen people open multiple locations, not just own and operate one. And so there is immense growth. I mean, both of you have grown personally, right? In different perspectives. Margaret, you started as, I believe, like a marketing coordinator or
I
something,
was,
and now
yes, I was a
look at
marketing
you.
coordinator. Yeah. I know.
So, it's really cool to see how the network has grown and the people that are in the network grow with it, which I think is really cool to see. So, another notable accolade or accomplishment this year was being named the top 100 franchise for women in traditionally male dominated industry. We are surrounded by men. There's nothing wrong with that. This is a very hands-on uh, career path that we've chosen, but there are several types of roles within restoration. So, what do you believe that the brand is doing differently to attract and retain women in restoration, and mainly at the franchise ownership level? Because I have seen quite a few women in your guys' network that actually do own and operate. So, Melissa, since you sit in that seat, what are your thoughts on what is going on within PuroClean that is driving the success of women in the space?
That's a really good question. And one thing that's really exciting about this topic specifically in our region in the Puget Sound, our newest franchise owner that just bought into the system is two women running the operation by themselves. And I just think that is the coolest thing. So really, what I believe is one of the biggest reasons is the way that the Pure Clean network is structured from the top down. And what I mean by that is that it's built in a way that leaves room for collaboration, but also actively promotes it. What I've seen from some of our competitive franchise systems is that it seems maybe they don't mean it this way, but how it plays out looking from the outside in is that their structure seems to pit the franchisees against each other. But in our network, with the way that the franchise agreement is written and the way that the culture is presented to the owners, how training goes, the mentorship programs, all of that, we work very collaboratively. We share resources, we help each other on large losses, we mentor each other, and we actually really want each other to succeed. In the Puget Sound region, if you look at the map, the territory map, it's almost all filled up. Our borders touching each other. There's what, like eight owners in the greater Seattle area, I believe, covering everything from Marysville all the way down to Lakewood. And you would think that we'd be on top of each other, but we're not. We help each other. We give each other marketing ideas. We talk about how to complete a job when we run out of equipment. It's like, hey, I've got this huge one. Can I borrow some of your equipment? And we do that. I think that that collaborative design of the Peer to Clean network is especially attractive to a woman franchise owner because I believe it creates an environment where you don't have to be a lone wolf. You don't have to go it alone. And instead of being, pressured to compete against the people around you, you're encouraged to build relationships, to lean on your network, both corporate and other owners, and also contribute your own individual strengths back into it. So, in my experience, I think women in particular really thrive in environments that emphasize communication, collaboration, and finding your tribe. We're all moms. We have all heard that the mom's got to find your tribe. Who's your tribe? You can't go it without a tribe. Pure Clean is the same way. It really is. And I feel I've got my tribe in Pure Clean with my impact group, but also with many other women in the network who have been really formative for me, Sandra White, Becky Edgren, Jenny Hawkins, Jennifer Restrepo, all and more. All of these are women who have done what I'm trying to do, and they're willing to share, and they're open. And that collaborative nature of the network, that's why I think women are showing up more.
That's a great answer. I will definitely say too. You mentioned some women that I do know. I've actually had the pleasure of interviewing Becky, and she too said very similar things that you just said. So, I will definitely say too, I will definitely say too, it's very, interesting to hear and see the way things play out in this industry, right? Because I will say in the last 5 years, women have definitely made a huge impact, and there's even more women than there ever were before. But speaking about the Puro Clean team and family, you have women scattered throughout all different types of leadership and different roles, which I think is really, really cool. And we actually get to meet each other and speak. And so, Margaret is walking and living proof. Melissa, you are as well. So, Margaret, do you have anything else to add to what Melissa just had to say?
Yeah, I mean, Melissa, you covered a lot of great topics, and I agree with most of what Melissa said. And, speaking to the transparency that Melissa was talking about earlier, it's true. I think we are very transparent. Our value system is strong from a corporate perspective. So, from the top down, I think that trickles down into the franchise network, as well as the strength of the women in our network. I think the women in our network do a really great job of attracting other like-minded women to this industry and to PuroClean. And Becky Egren spearheads our Puro Women's Growth Group. It's become so successful that some of the men in our network have asked, hey, can I join? Can I be a part of the Puro Women's Growth Group meeting at convention? And, as flattering as that is, we like to keep it to the women because it's a place where we can all talk and feel comfortable and talk about what's going right and what's going wrong and how do we fix it and kind of brainstorm with each other. I will also acknowledge the men in our company from the top down, from Mark and Frank all the way down. We have outstanding men who help us along the way. I find it funny because I had a recent experience where I posted a picture to LinkedIn and I had some of my friends comment, wow, you're the only woman standing in that picture and it's all men. And I had to laugh because I said, you know what? I get what you're saying, but not one of those men have ever done anything to make me feel anything less than stellar. They have been
Absolutely.
advocates, they have respected me, they have helped me grow in my career, and I have to consider myself one of the lucky ones because I know that doesn't ring true for everybody, but it's so important. And I think that's why I have such a passion for our network, for our leadership, for this brand, because we do have a really strong culture and we do advocate for both women and men and just business professionals in general. So I agree with everything Melissa said and more.
Well said. I will definitely say to your point about what you posted on LinkedIn, I
Mhm.
see you guys truly as a family, right?
Yeah,
And most franchises are, but I will definitely say to your point, like you're an equal. There's no, you don't see yourself any differently, and neither do the men. I think
right.
and I said this to Becky too when I met with her and we spoke, that we all have not necessarily weaknesses, but things that we're not the best at, right? And I think that we balance each other really well, both men and women, and even the generational differences, right? The
Yes.
younger and the older generation, we have strengths in areas that maybe the other generation or, other age group or whatever don't really have. And so you guys have found the right culture fit, the right balance. And I will say, you guys are a great representation of, how you really feel about one another because you guys all talk about each other the same way. You're always giving each other accolades. And again, it's like a family, right? Men
Mhm.
and women are both in this franchise and they also play and appreciate both roles too, right? The Puro Women's group is a big thing at convention. There's a whole like I think it's like 8 hours or something where you guys are all collaborating. And so, the network itself has done a really good job at taking care of you guys and allowing you guys to collaborate regardless of where you come from or your background, right? Which is a extremely crucial in the world we live in.
If you don't mind, I would like to add a little bit more to what Margaret just said. So you talked about posting the picture on LinkedIn where you're the only woman and it's all men and people comment on that. That's similar to me in my impact group. I'm the only woman in that group and the rest of them are men. And we are the tightest group. They are such solid people. I love working with them. It's been a couple of years now that we've been in that impact group together, and they are just as open and vulnerable as I am, and vice versa. It's a great team. And I think that one of the reasons um, why women are also attracted to PureClean and stay in the network is because it's not a gimmick. We have a Pure Women's Growth Group, but it's not that we can be seen having a women's growth group because we are promoting women. It's because that's how we actually operate. We do not, neither one is more important than the other. And I believe that in my personal life also. It's not that we need to make men less to emphasize women. It's that we can emphasize both at the same time, and we truly do, because we come with unique, different strengths and perspectives. And when we have a whole, like a more, you could say, holistic approach to running a business or to running a franchise network, I think that's when you get the best of both worlds, and we both get to shine because we bring something different, and we can maximize both.
Yes, well said, because I think to your point, it's playing off of what you bring to the table, but also making sure that you're nurturing those groups the way that they need to be. And everybody has different wants and needs, but having these different groups within your network allow you to spotlight specific groups, but also work together, which I think is extremely important. Now, with growth, that's a touchy subject, I think, in this industry right now because it's been a weird couple of years, and I'm saying that nicely. Franchise satisfaction doesn't always scale with the growth, and I think we've heard this throughout the entire industry. How have you ensured support, training, and culture have kept the pace as the system expands? Margaret, with you and your role, what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And that's such a big question because there's so many layers to it. And so we moved franchise engagement into the operations department. And we did that intentionally because we do believe it is a big function of the operation of the franchise business. So underneath franchise engagement, we have our events and as well as our social media director. So we're looking at everything holistically, where Melissa said two things can be true. We bring strengths and weaknesses and we all help each other and we can kind of build a bigger puzzle if we all put the right pieces in place. So what we're trying to do is really tackle it from an operation perspective, but also keeping the franchises seen and heard and making sure that their needs are being taken care of, that their pain points are being addressed, that broken systems are being corrected, as well as really listening to some new ideas because we don't always have all the answers. Our franchise network is full of brilliant people. And I say that so sincerely because some of our greatest ideas come from those in the field. They're out there, they're understanding what's going on every single day. They're looking at ways to build their business and make it better. And it's easy, for a franchisor to sit back and say, well, we have all the answers. We're going to implement X, Y, and Z. And we really, as a group, try not to do that. We listen to our owners. And to me, that's bigger than anything else. Listening, taking it in, and then taking action. And I think that's where we kind of stand apart from the rest.
Well, I would definitely say to your point, listening to those who are in the field every day and in the day-to-day makes a huge difference because oftentimes they are your eyes and ears and letting you know, hey, there's something changing and it's not going to work with what we're currently doing. Here's what our thoughts are, right? And so when you have that, that allows immense growth as well, right? Because now it's a fluid connection. You're able to have conversations that otherwise you wouldn't really, right? I think we see
Right.
that in all walks of life where you're in a box and that's the box you stay in, right?
Yeah.
And you guys just don't operate that way, right?
And you can't take away from somebody's experience, right? So they're experiencing something in real time and giving us that feedback. It's important for us to take in that feedback, digest it, take our time, work it out, and see, what we can create from it, right? So it really is a collaborative environment, like Melissa said. So that's part of our active collaboration. And then we try to lead with a servant's heart and we're very passionate about it.
100%. Melissa, any additional thoughts?
I will just say that I back everything Margaret just said because um, I feel that what I see is that the culture is actually lived out from the top down. Margaret talks about moving franchise engagement into operations, and I think that that's very powerful. I think that that is really what I've experienced. I didn't talk to Margaret about her answers to these questions before we come onto this podcast, but one of the things that I made a note of was that we do feel heard. I do feel heard as a franchisee. I know who to reach out to when I have an issue with something. And when I ask for support or when I identify a recurring challenge, I'm not just kind of filed to the side. I feel that the team looks for systemic fixes, not just to get someone to be quiet and put it under the rug, but to really solve the problem at the root. And the parallel on a franchise level that I've experienced is I can think about what I think is the best way to run my business, but if I'm not listening to the feedback and the experience of my technicians who are out in the field actually executing the work, and I tell them how it's going to go and it does not play out in reality, that doesn't go well. And I can't run a good business if I'm not listening to those people. And I think that that's the same thing corporate's doing, but at a larger scale. And I think they're doing it really effectively.
Thank you, Melissa. I would also like to add that it's not singularly what we're doing at a corporate level too. It really, for me, as now looking into VP of franchise engagement, it's understanding the individual, that franchise owner. And as we grow, one of the pain points is losing sight of who is an owner because you're growing so rapidly. It's easy to know every franchise owner when you have 100 franchise owners. But when you
Hmm.
have 500, 1,000, and more, it's easy to lose track of who's actually an owner in our system. So something that's important to me in this role is understanding that I know Melissa has two beautiful children. She is an individual. She is a mom. She is a wife. I know her dad does wonderful work on trips. They travel a lot for mission trips and they do really great work. I know that a franchise owner of ours in New Jersey does so much with charity and the fire department, and there's great efforts across the board. I know that Diana and Luis Gonzalez in the West Coast, their children are now part of the business. So what I'm trying to do is kind of look beyond just franchise owner and look at the individual. Like, what are you doing as an individual? What's going on in your life? What's impacting the business? Because it's important to understand that it's not just about work and what's coming to you and your clients. It's what's going on in your personal life. What's happening with your family? Is there anything impacting you? How can we help you? And I think that's also something that differentiates us.
I will definitely say to your point, like hearing you talk about that is one thing that I've witnessed personally, right? I do attend convention and seeing everybody with even sometimes they bring their family, right? And
Yeah.
everybody's talking and it's not always about business. And that's the other thing too, because work is work, right? We know that we have to work in our life, right? But when you're having a good time and you love the people around you and it feels like a family away from your actual family, I think it's a healthier balance and relationship with work and life as a whole, right? We all travel, we all have children, we all have jobs. It's nice to bring that humanizing factor into the business. And I've probably said this 5,000 times. My favorite word right now is humanizing because we need to do that as an industry because oftentimes we see or we're seen by consumers as people who come in and do the work. Yes, we are, but we're also tired at times, especially when a hurricane hits or a fire, right? The last thing we want is to not be seen or heard. And I think you guys do a really good job. And you mentioned people throughout your network, and that to them, I know is priceless because now they feel heard, known, respected, and cared for. And I think that's extremely important in this industry in particular, where we're dealing with some of the most unfortunate circumstances. And sometimes that beats you up to the core. Um, and so I don't want to take away from that at all because, what we see sometimes always isn't the greatest thing, right? It can actually hurt you. And sometimes that person just saying, "Hey, how was your day? Is there anything you want to share?" can go a really long way. And I know you guys are really, really good at that. So this kind of brings me to something that I think is interesting because we're talking about growth and humanization and caring for each other. You know, I know that there's a huge interest in franchising in general across the industry, but even people who are coming into this industry, and it's only growing. I think it's only going to continue to grow, but it's a path to small business ownership at first, right? But then for Melissa, you have more than one location, and there's other people in your network who I think last year at convention somebody's like opened their 10th or something location, crazy like that, and that was really cool to see. So I know that this brings misconceptions. So, Melissa, what misconceptions do you really see, especially amongst the women who are joining this space, about entering the industry and, owning their own franchise before they really understand maybe your guys' model? You know, what misconceptions are really talked about? Because I know there's a lot that aren't talked about, but in your mind, what are those misconceptions?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So one of the big misconceptions that I have seen is that, well, first of all, some people don't even know the restoration industry exists until the first time that their washing machine explodes or whatever. But a lot of people think that the restoration industry is just hard, physical, dirty labor, emergency response, 24/7, 365, crawling through a crawl space, hauling equipment at 2 a.m. Yes, that's part of it, but that's not what attracted me. I'll tell you that much. But the industry also is really unique because it requires strategy, leadership, a lot of empathy, customer management, good systems, dynamic systems. Women in particular, you don't need to do every field task to be a part of the network. I have been on job sites, but most of my career, I have actually worked remotely. I'm not physically I'm 2,000 miles away from my business. Now, I have a very good team and a very good partner in my dad to help be the boots on the ground, of course. I couldn't do it on my own from here, but you don't have to do it on your own. If you know what your gaps are and you gather a team to help fill those gaps, then you'll do better. I, in my experience has been remote leadership, becoming a mom after opening the business. I've had two kids. My husband's deployed 3 times. We've moved 3 times. It's just, as a military spouse as well, being able to find a career that is dynamic enough that I can take it with me when he gets assigned somewhere else. And even now, he's getting out of the military, but he's a pilot, and so we're still going to not live at home. I don't know where we're going to live, but I can still build my business, and we can take it from zero to millions of dollars annually. And what I'm trying to get at is the flexibility. If you have a franchise, if you have a business, you don't have to fit in the same box. You don't have to do it the same way as everyone else, but you also don't have to reinvent the wheel. For me, as a millennial mom, I want all of it. I want a fulfilling career. I want to develop myself personally and professionally. I want to contribute to my household income. I want to develop a family that is close and warm, and I'm there for my kids, and I can pick them up when they're sick and all of that. And I want my identity to be both. They both inform each other. And when you run your own business, if you do it right and you build the right team and you have the right priorities, you can do that.
Margaret, any additional thoughts before I weigh in?
I truly enjoy listening to Melissa talk because she's always right on the money. Even when we've had other conversations, so brilliant. But it's true. I think that's something that is attractive about this industry. And before I got into the industry, I didn't know anything about it. I started out in marketing, right? Marketing was my passion, and mass communications was the direction that I was going in. And then I discovered the industry, and I realized that there's so much opportunity and so much potential. And I think that's what women in other prospective franchises should keep in mind is it's an opportunity for you to be an entrepreneur, a business owner. Like Melissa said, you don't necessarily need to be doing the dirty work. You might at first because you have to start somewhere and you have to build your foundation and build your business, but you can grow it. You can be the business owner. You can have incredible teams like Melissa does and make sure that everybody has ownership of their role and is doing what they need to do so that you can manage it from the top and build successful businesses in multiple locations and grow it and hit the goals that you're aspiring to hit. So I think it's attractive for many reasons. Like Melissa mentioned, it's the flexibility as well of building the kind of business that you want to fit your life, to fit your family's needs and your personal goals. So I think that there's a lot to be said about this industry and about PureClean and the ways to structure it.
I would definitely say too, to echo what you both of you ladies just said. I think from the outside looking in, people don't really understand how you can make this a career path that fits your life and fits your wants and needs, right? To your point, you don't have to be in the field. If you want to start in the field or go into the field, that's always an option. But one thing that I will say is I think a lot of discussions that we've seen and heard of over the last couple of years are the owners that still operate their business, like they're in the field. And sometimes you cannot efficiently and effectively own a business doing that. And so Melissa has found the way that it works for her and her life and her family. Margaret, you're doing your thing with being a new mom and traveling and all of these things. And so with that being said, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that we are 24/7, 365. Everybody in every position cannot have a life, and that is not true. And for a younger generation or somebody who wants to have a family, men or women, that could be an immediate turnoff, but it doesn't have to be because obviously all of us on this call are walking and living proof that yes, we are in a nonstop industry, but there are ways to still make a healthy work-life balance. Melissa, do you have additional thoughts?
I do, and you have touched on something that I'm actually very passionate about. So, like I said, a little bit ago, I founded the company was founded by my dad, but I helped him from day zero. I started out answering the phone on payroll 15 hours a week, and now I run it. I did not plan on that. He did not plan on that, but I found out that I love business and I love figuring out the problems. But I think the the upcoming generation or millennials and Gen Z and all them, I think that we can get a little bit of a bad rap sometimes because older generations seem to feel sometimes that we're lazy because we don't want to be available for work all the time, 24/7. We want to have the other parts of our life matter as well. And I think that you can do both. You can, if you are strategic, if you have a plan, then you can build your business that way. It's really important to me. And I'm sharing this with my team. I'm thinking about it while I'm developing my organizational design and figuring out what the roles look like. How are we going to accommodate for the fact that property damage can happen at any time of the day, but I refuse to run a company that requires a toxic work-life balance for my team. They need to know when they're off and when they're on. When they're on, I expect them to be on 100%. But when they're off, I expect them to be able to make plans, go to their kid's soccer game, go to their grandma's 90th birthday party, and not be getting a call from work because that's an unhealthy way to live. And I don't want to live that way. I want to be able to have time, but I don't want to have that flexibility on the backs of my team who I expect to not be able to live their lives that way. Designing the organization so that when emergencies happen, they're not a surprise because that's what we do. The plan should account for that. So have an on-call rotation so people can plan when they're on call. Have backups to the backups. So if someone gets sick, then things don't fall apart. And we can actually, I think it's so exciting because being able to run the company and have an impact on how it's designed and how it's run, sure, it's very intimidating sometimes. It's scary as heck because I have a lot of responsibility, but it's also incredibly empowering and really rewarding to be able to take the startup that my dad, he's your proverbial does not know how to stop working. He was a great startup owner. Um, I am a better second generation owner, and we work together because I have strengths towards developing stability, looking on doing the boring part, and he had the absolute nerve to just say, I think I'm going to start a restoration company. What could go wrong? And then we figure it out from there, but I guess what I'm getting at is the industry is 24/7, 365, but that doesn't mean that each person's job has to be that way if you have the right strategy. And honestly, every industry could say the same thing. You could be in finance and have a toxic work environment where they expect you to answer your Slack messages or your emails when you're on your honeymoon or something. We've all heard the stories, but you don't have to do it that way.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, I think probably all of us on this call have experienced some type of burnout, or we
Mhm.
feel like we're indebted to a specific job or whatever the case may be. We've all felt that. I mean, that's normal. It happens. But it shouldn't be something that we don't plan for, to your point, right? It becomes unhealthy. You set expectations for yourself, and by yourself, I mean your team. They set those expectations once, we're not telling them, hey, you're not supposed to be working, we've got this. And so I really appreciate you taking a moment to kind of talk about how operationally, yes, the business is 365, 24/7, but your team and the way that you run your operations and the rotations, that's not the way it is for everybody, right? There's somebody who is on call for a week at a time or whatever the case may be. But when you're off and you should be off, right? I think we've all had moments where we feel like, okay, I'm going on vacation, but should I take that work phone or should I, and the answer is no, right? There's a team that supports you, and that starts with the leadership. If that's not an expectation, then it carries down into your team. And I will
Right.
definitely say, when you're on vacation, you should be on vacation, to your point. The business will still run. And operations do feed into that, which means you create those expectations on how you operate your business, to your point. And
Mhm.
I think some people looking at this industry fear that you are 24/7, 365, no matter what role you play, but you just did a really great job at debunking that myth for me. So, with that being said, you did mention strategy in that it is part of your strategy. So, Margaret, looking ahead, you guys have been recognized several times over the last couple of years. This year, you've had some great accomplishments, as we mentioned earlier in the podcast, and they do influence your growth and strategy. So, over the next 12 to 24 months, what should prospective franchisees start paying attention to now? That is a very big question, and I know you
It,
have a very big answer, but I think oftentimes in this space, we're only looking a couple of months ahead, but we can't. We need to start looking in that 12 to 24-month range, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a loaded question. And I feel like that question in itself could be an entire topic, right? Because there's so much. The emergence of the AI technology that's a buzzword for everybody. Everybody has AI on top of mind, and it's really in the mix right now. But there's so much more beyond just, hey, AI is emerging. It's the industry is shifting, the industry is changing, the way that we operate, the way that we're looking at things is shifting as a whole. And how are we keeping up with that? What are the things that we're implementing to keep up with that change? And flexibility, right? Because I think there's so many people that have struggles or hardships with change, but that's inevitable. That's the way we grow. That's how we evolve and pursue bigger goals and bigger opportunities. For us, I think that big focus on operations and sales is going to be paramount, focusing on each franchise location, what they can be doing to help their communities and growing and focusing on that profitability and really expanding on the businesses that they've founded. So I think that there's going to be a lot in the next 12 to 24 months. I think technology is a big part of it, but I think don't lose sight of the operations and the relationship part of it. Something that's important to us is relentless customer service, the focus on the customer experience, what people are experiencing with PureClean. What does an interaction look like? How do I feel after PureClean has been in my home? Or how are the insurance companies and property management companies and big commercial firms? What are they experiencing from the corporate level, from the franchise level, from the employees of our franchises? It's holistic, and I think we have to look at all of it. And I think that for prospective franchises, they should be excited about what's ahead. And it would be really great for them to be a part of that.
Yeah, and I would definitely say to your point, we all know that AI and technology is definitely top of mind, but it's just going to become part of our operations once the buzz is eliminated, right? But to your point, the customer satisfaction, the team building, the focus on operations, and really just the holistic approach to the business as a whole are extremely important. And I will say this. AI and technology is a big part of what we do, and it always will be. But one thing that I think people forget is that we are customers too, and we don't like talking to bots. We don't like not dealing with humans. And so that's the same for our customers. There is a human touch, if you will. There is a specific want and need from a customer dealing with a business. And those things that you said, sales, operations, even marketing, those are big deals in our space and will make a huge difference in the next 12 to 24 months. And partnerships are part of that. And I think sometimes we see a shiny object and we just kind of focus on that, and we have to really look past that because hurricane season is coming, winter is coming, we have all these things coming that we can't lose sight of because we're so focused on that technology or AI at the moment. It's only part of our business, it's not the whole business, right? So with that being said, we've kind of talked a lot about business and strategy and accolades and what it is to be a woman in the industry, but it wouldn't be right to not close with this burning question that I know is very near and dear to both of your hearts. So, both of you women are mothers and wives, and you're balancing work and life and the roles that you play outside of work. How do you balance these roles in a healthy way that is sustainable? Melissa, mother of two and a wife of someone who has served our country. Thank you for that because you are too, in a sense, serving as well alongside of him. So, what does that look like, and how do you keep that healthy balance?
Well, I think the first misconception is that there's ever going to truly be a balance that's balanced all the time. I think that you need to understand that the needs of each of those aspects of your life are not going to always be level with each other. Sometimes there's a critical need of the business, and I'm like, okay, look, we're gonna DoorDash Chick-fil-A for dinner, and I'm just gonna it's gonna be Bluey night. The kids are gonna watch Bluey, eat their chicken nuggets because I have to get on a call with my executive team because we have a crisis to figure out. That has happened. And but at the same time, likewise, there's been other times where I would not wish this upon any mom or any family, but we had rotavirus in our house this year. That was a week I do not ever want to live through again. You don't want to see your 2-year-old with an IV in an ambulance because they're dehydrated. It was horrific. But the team, my work team, backed me up. and I knew that things were still going. And I could divert the attention to my priority that needed it most at that time, which was my family. And you know, if you keep your big priorities in place, do you know why you're doing it? You know, for me, the business is not the point, the business is the vehicle. The business is the vehicle for me to become who I think I can be, which is better than what I am right now, but what I am right now is better than what I was 9 years ago. You know, if you can approach it that way, where the business is not the goal. You don't give up everything for the business, but you also can't give up everything for the family, because if you do that, then you are hurting your family in the long term. I feel that I'm investing in my family's future, and sometimes that has meant my husband has to pick up the slack more. I've not done a lot of laundry over the last 2 years, but now that he's switching careers, I'm going to probably be doing more of the laundry because now he needs me to back him, you know, and you just kind of have to take it a season at a time and think about why you're doing it, and then you make the most of the resources in front of you. That's my best answer to that question.
Well, and I would definitely say for those who are a parent, not even just a mother, but if a parent and a spouse who are in this industry, whether you're a business owner, upper management, technician, whatever the case may be, the balance isn't always going to be, to your point, equal, right? There are going to be moments where the business has some demands that you need to meet, and that means that your spouse or your family needs to help take care of the family situation, right? I too have situations like that here. You know, I haven't washed a dish in the last 7 years. My husband does them, right? So, you know, that's the balance that works for us, right? I do travel quite a bit, and so, you know, I think when we talk about work-life balance, people think that it has to be balanced all the time. And to your point, it's not. But you have to understand if there is something that demands on either side, you need to be able to focus all of your attention on that when that time does come. So, Margaret, you are a new mother. How exciting. Your baby is so precious. You know, how has that started to look like now? You've always had work-life balance, but now with the role of mother, what does that look like for you? And what do you think the biggest thing is to providing that some type of balance that's sustainable for you and your role?
Yeah, absolutely. So motherhood has been my favorite role. I love being a mom. She's amazing and the best thing. Um, but I really don't believe in work-life balance. And I say that because I think it all essentially overlaps, right?
Mm.
I think to echo what you have said and what Melissa said is that it's never going to be 50-50. It's never going to be, okay, I'm all work right now, I'm all home right now. It kind of overlaps each other. And sometimes I will be feeding her and I'm answering some emails on my phone, or, you know, vice versa. I'm working and I have family taking care of her. My husband is taking care of her. And as much as it's important for you to have a tribe at work and like-minded women at work and individuals, it's important for you to have a support system. So friends, family, anyone who can jump in and help, I think is paramount. And I will always be grateful to the people who have helped us along the way. And systems and routines, I will say, are the best thing ever because you get her accustomed to a system and a routine, and they understand and they really they're so resilient, children. They work into your schedules, into your lives, and it's all about how you structure it at the end of the day. And in addition to that, I will say where you work matters. And I think that's
Mhm.
where we go back to Pure Clean with the values and the culture and what we bring to the table. Because even from the top down, there's been a tremendous level of flexibility and understanding of this new shift in my life, right? And understanding that I may not always be able to be in the office. So some days I'll have to work from home and I'll have help and care at home, but it's just a safety net and something that's comforting knowing that I can be in the same space as my daughter, even if I am working. So I think that it really does matter where you work, and I've had that experience here.
I
Yeah,
agree.
and I will definitely say, oh, go ahead, Melissa.
Sorry, I was just gonna say I agree with that 100%. And I think that if you go into it with the idea that you have to be able to do all of it to do it right, then just don't, because it's not possible. the support network, like Margaret talked about, is so important. And that is not just childcare, although I have that, and Tracy's my angel from heaven, but there's grocery delivery, house cleaning help, your spouse or Mimi or grandma helping and traveling with me and things like that. So having the network is really important, but knowing what are the most important things for you to spend your time on and figuring out how to automate, delegate, or systematize the rest, which is always a work in progress and always shifting. But that is how you can spend your time on what is the most impactful that only you can do and be able to go forward with everything else.
Yeah, and I would definitely say for people who are listening and watching, we have three different women on this call who balance and work differently, but it works for us, right? So to to really put that into perspective, that's for everybody, whether you're a woman or a man in this industry, you can find quote unquote balance. And I think it's different for everybody, but it's important to have a healthy relationship with work and still have a healthy home life as well. Oftentimes, I think we sometimes don't remember that. And I know I kind of contradicted myself because a lot of people, I say sometimes often because there are people and buckets of people who just work all the time. They don't know anything outside of that. And then there's some people who maybe do balance, but they maybe feel guilty one way or another. And really, at the end of the day, this is an industry that is nonstop all the time. But to your lady's point, it's who you work with, what organization you are part of, and the people that you have on both sides, your home life and your work life, that make a true difference. I had a phenomenal time talking to both of you ladies and getting to know you a little bit better. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode and really took what we said with a grain of salt because this industry is so flexible if you allow it to be. For all of you watching, we will see you on the next episode of Ask the Expert. Take care.